Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story in which our OP, a law student coordinating a high-stakes moot court competition, finds herself dealing with a blatantly plagiarizing team who tries to turn the tables on her. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Don't challenge my work ethic. I will use that same work ethic to make you regret it. Female law student here. My university organizes this major moot court competition, which is part of an international competition. We organize the rounds for all national level contestants, and then the qualifying teams go to the international rounds. It's one of the most esteemed competitions of the world, so the stakes are generally pretty high. I was selected to be the coordinator for the national rounds because I've worked with the organizing team before and have a reputation of being absolutely thorough in my work and never leaving room for errors or loopholes. One thing I realized when I took charge was that things have always been done with a bit of a lax attitude, so I revamped the whole structure. I made sure we had proper rules of procedure in place and all instructions were communicated to the teams beforehand, so there was never any scope of doubt on our end, and no team could accuse us of foul play because our university also participates in the competition every year. Due to COVID, we had to cancel the physical rounds where the teams would argue before the judges and only accept memorial submissions, where each team sent in their written arguments in a prescribed format for each party to the case. The memorials are judged on content, but there are penalties for not adhering to the format. The top scoring teams would go for the international rounds. Since it was just a memorial submissions now, there was a higher burden on us to ensure they were properly checked, and I did exactly that. One of our rules is regarding zero plagiarism, and I had sent the plagiarism guidelines to all the teams in advance, which was also very detailed. We used Turnitin portal for plagiarism check, so we have a similarity index where certain things wouldn't be counted as plagiarism. Name of the competition, facts of the case, citations, things like that. But we made sure to define what plagiarism is, lifting arguments from sources and passing them off as your own without citing them, and the penalty for plagiarism is disqualification. We had also internally decided amongst the organizing team that we wouldn't disqualify any team because we recognize the amount of hard work that goes into drafting memorials, especially in the middle of a pandemic when most people don't have access to university libraries. This one team had almost 80% plagiarism in all their memorials, which was way above the acceptable limit that was covered by our similarity index. I sent them their Turnitin reports expecting a typical groveling apology with a "please don't disqualify us," which I would graciously accept. However, this team instead decided to send us an email full of accusations. They claimed that we weren't doing our jobs properly and that we're relying on software when memorial checking requires human intervention and there was laxity in our work. They went on and on about how we're dumb to not realize that the things that are showing up plagiarized are all the things I mentioned above as part of the similarity index. The 80% was apart from all these things. They didn't acknowledge that. They cried foul play and warned us not to throw around serious accusations lightly. Where they messed up was in claiming that I hadn't done my due diligence and threatening me. What they didn't know is that I had personally gone over every single memorial submitted to us, which was close to 100, to ensure that no team tried to dupe us into thinking their memorials were original. As a student, I know exactly all the ways to beat Turnitin. One of the ways is by replacing every fifth word in the paragraph you've copied, which is what the team had done. I went over their memorials, all 6 of them again. I cross-checked them with the original sources and highlighted all the paragraphs, sentences, even citations that were copied, along with highlighting the text in the original source material. This included all the paragraphs where they had replaced the fifth word. In the end, their entire memorials showed up as plagiarized. I wrote back to them, attached the highlighted memorials, the highlighted sources documents. I also color coordinated the highlighted text and attached a key so they'd be reminded of which part of their memorial was copied from which source. I wrote that they'll find that there is no laxity in our work, and with some human intervention, we can always tell when someone has tried to dupe the software. I added that my initial plan was to let them off with a heavy penalty, but that if they did not wish to acknowledge their transgressions, I would have to disqualify them and inform their university authorities, which would have very serious consequences. I got a reply a little later with a humble apology and stating that they will accept whatever penalty we would want to impose and would like to avoid disqualification if possible. Nothing made me happier than seeing that email. There's a whole other joy to using the proper mechanisms to put someone in their place. Always makes me happy when you can call out someone on their BS. Good for you. Would have loved to have seen the look on their face when they realized they couldn't lie their way out of their mess. And our second story. An evil landlord tried to build something on my property. I'd just gotten home from work one day when I noticed something strange. A brand new fence had suddenly appeared not only in my neighbor's yard, but crossing my property line by a good 4 to 5 feet. It stretched roughly 25 to 30 feet long, and while I'm no expert at measuring by sight, it was clear that this was not just a mistake. The residents of the property next door are renters, so I figured the landlord must have had the fence installed. To make matters even more confusing, the flat side of the fence, the side that's usually supposed to face out, was facing into their yard, which didn't make much sense to me. I wasn't sure if that was even up to code, but I'd never seen a fence put up like that. Now, personally, I'm not someone who would lose sleep over a fence being a few feet into my yard. There was less grass for me to mow. However, I knew this could become a bigger issue down the road, lowering my property value, or worse, having them legally claim that strip of my land as theirs through adverse possession. I figured it was worth checking into, so I decided to talk to the contractor who'd installed the fence. I approached him casually, pretending to be interested in hiring him for future work. This way, I got his information without tipping him off to my concerns. After speaking with him, I confirmed that the fence was built by the landlord, not the tenants. I knew I'd have to speak with the landlord next. Later that day, I finally caught the landlord. Our conversation didn't exactly go well. Me: "Hey, do you know you've built a fence on my property?" Landlord: "Can't be. I've double-checked everything." Me: "I checked too, and the fence is definitely on my side of the property line." "I won't leave this hanging. I want my property back." Landlord, smirking: "I don't care, buddy. What are you going to do, sue me?" That was the last thing I heard from him, and I knew right then I had no choice but to take action. His smug attitude made it clear he wasn't going to fix the problem on his own. I decided to act fast, knowing that the longer I waited, the more complicated the situation could become. The very next day, I hired a surveyor to come out and assess my property. I needed official proof to back up my claims, and I wasn't going to leave this up to guesswork. The surveyor came out within the week, and sure enough, the results were exactly as I thought. The fence was encroaching on my land by 4 to 5 feet. I had the proof I needed. With the survey results in hand, I decided to take the next step. I sent the landlord a certified letter along with a copy of the survey, politely demanding that the fence be removed from my property within 30 days. I made it clear that if nothing was done, I would have no choice but to take legal action and file a property dispute. I didn't want to go that route, but it was becoming clear that the landlord wasn't going to play fair. As expected, I received no response from him. Once the 30-day deadline passed with no action, I followed through on my promise. I hired a lawyer who drafted and filed the necessary paperwork to take the landlord to court. Not long after the landlord received the official notice, he finally realized that I wasn't messing around. Suddenly, his whole attitude changed. Within a week, the contractor came back to my property and removed the offending fence, reinstalling it properly on the neighbor's side of the property line. The whole ordeal ended without much fanfare. No apologies from the landlord, but at that point, I wasn't expecting one. The important thing was that I got my property back, and I wouldn't have to worry about any legal issues down the road if I ever wanted to sell the house. In the end, it was a hassle, but I'm glad I handled it the way I did. I don't need a booking. I'm a friend of the owner. So when I was young, my mother worked for a car dealership owned by this really nice older guy. Like, this guy was really well off, very well spoken, not what an American would think of as a posh American accent, not that extreme, but if you're English, you've probably got a good idea. He owned the dealership, the building, the land, and at least half a dozen other businesses in the area, and most of the land and commercial properties in the town. But for all that, he was also the kind of guy who would hear that his staff's 14-year-old child was getting a hamster and go, "My daughter used to have a hamster." And 3 days later, he just gave my mom like 400 pounds worth of Rotostack hamster stuff. Every year, he'd do up the whole showroom for Christmas, dress up as Santa, and give out presents to the kids in the area, etc. Anyway, the reason I remember this was because it was the day my mom took me over to her work so I could say thank you for all the hamster stuff. So we got there, and we were waiting for him to be free. I was talking to the people at the desk because I knew all of them, when suddenly we hear this woman's raised voice. Looked over to see this old woman, at least old to a 14-year-old. She may have been, somewhere between 40 and 60, with the owner. And she was absolutely laying into him because they couldn't do whatever it was she wanted. Now, everyone working there always wore a red jumper, but not a name badge because everyone's desk had a nameplate. By chance, I was wearing a reddish jumper, not the same red, not even a particularly similar red that day. The woman comes up to me. I can only assume she must have been short-sighted or something because my 14-year-old face did not look anywhere near working age. I could more easily have passed for a 10-year-old than a 16 or 17-year-old, and my entire work experience at that point was helping to put magazines in envelopes to post for like 3 pounds per 250. Okay, I need to book my car in and loan a car. Me, oh, the service desk is over there. No, I didn't sound like an adult either. No, go get it sorted. I need to be gone in 10 minutes. I'm sorry, I don't work here. I don't even... At that point, she cut me off and went off. I don't have time for your excuses. I need to be gone in 10 minutes. Now give me that loaner car, you stupid child. A moment later, a hand comes down on my shoulder. I look up, and who is it? Yep, it's the owner. He says, "I'll handle this, AXW. How can I help you, madam?" I backed off to the service desk and watched. The service guys were already giving WTF looks to each other, but the woman just got louder and shriller. "I am a close personal friend of John Jeffries, the owner. Now I need my service and a loaner car." "You have a booking?" "I don't need a booking. I'm a friend of the owner." "Unfortunately, ma'am, the workshop is fully booked today, but we can book you in for a later date." "You'll do it today. That's it. Who do you answer to?" At this point, everyone in the room and some back office staff were looking at her. This is where the owner gave an answer that I will never forget because it was so calm and so quiet. "Madam, I answer to no one but God." "What? That's it. What's your name? You and that disrespectful child are gone." "John Jeffries, the owner. And to the best of my knowledge, we've never met. Also, that child is literally a child, not an employee." She kind of froze. Then he gestured to the organizational chart, the thing they used to have on the wall with his face right at the top of it, right above the word owner. She left and earned the ignoble quality of being one of only 2 customers who we ever wrote to saying, "You are no longer welcome at our business," in over 35 years of owning the company. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.